Thank you, Hannah. That was very helpful. And a big welcome to all of you. It's really delightful to see you even under these circumstances. And we had 122 Coastal Rivers Conservation Trust members registered for this event, which is really outstanding. And we appreciate your participation. As you know, we're a member-driven, community-based organization and are dependent on your continuing engagement. And we're most grateful for all of the support that you provide us. Thank you very much. We're sorry we can't be together in person. One of these days we will be able to gather and share stories and simply be together again. And we hope that that isn't in the too far distant future. Let me just review how the annual membership meeting is going to unfold this evening. We're going to acknowledge the service of 7 members of the board who will be leaving due to their terms expiring. We'll welcome 4 new board members on which the membership voted. We'll have a brief financial statement by Bob Barkalow. We'll review the process by which we created a new 5-year strategic plan, and we'll be treated to an informative, inspiring presentation by our Executive Director, Steven Hufnagel, on the year's past accomplishments and an exciting and stimulating vision for the future. This will include a brief video that was nicely produced by the staff. So let me move on to the outgoing board members. We had a special board celebration of our own recently at which we recognized and thanked each of the board members. But I'd like to have you join me in recognizing and thanking the following outgoing board members: David Lawrence, Joan Panic, Tamara Stock, Tom Field, Barnaby Porter, Norman Saucier, and George Keyes. With grateful appreciation, we thank each and every one of you for your dedication to Coastal Rivers Conservation Trust. Your individual and collective contributions have made Coastal Rivers a successful organization and have helped create a healthy community and healthy environment. We're going to miss your service on the board. I know I've spoken to some of you individually, and you've agreed to continue serving on committees and in other ways. But we're going to miss you. We're going to miss your varied talents. And thank you very much for your service. Four new board member nominations were recommended by the Governance Committee and presented for consideration to the full membership. Through an online process, the backgrounds of each nominee were submitted to the full membership for consideration, and the membership was asked again online to vote. Over 350 members voted online and overwhelmingly supported the nomination of the 4 individuals. Those individuals are Gordon Morell, Dennis McKenna, Kathy Lehman, and Ellen Wells. And if you're all present, if there was some way you could let us know that you're there, and maybe Kathy, welcome Kathy.
Joel, Gordon's here.
Is that Gordon? Yeah. Hi, Gordon. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dennis McKenna. Dennis?
Yeah, Dennis is waving, and Ellen is waving.
And Ellen?
Yeah.
Welcome.
If each would unmute and say hello, then you'll pop up right to the top of the screen.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Hello, Ellen Wells says hello. I hope to see more.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Kathy Lehman.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
Hi, Rebecca Bell.
Oh, hi, Rebecca. All right.
And Gordon Morell. Nice to see everybody.
Hey, Gordon.
each of these members has been very active in coastal rivers over the years, so they're probably familiar to many of you. They've contributed in lots of different ways, and we're really glad to have them on the board. Before I introduce Steven, I'd like to spend a little time going over the process by which we arrived at or created our new strategic plan. We created a 12-person strategic planning group, which was equally represented by staff and board members. We engaged the services of a professional facilitator, Bob Wright, who lives right here in our community, and he's an excellent facilitator. The strategic plan was aspirational. And by that, I mean, oftentimes in a strategic planning process, an organization will take an existing plan, look at it, revise it, refine it, update it, and then proceed. As a result of our unification, which by all accounts has been very successful, we decided that we would essentially start fresh and start from scratch, if you will. It was a thoughtful, introspective, and forward-looking exercise, and we think we have an ambitious strategic plan for the years ahead. This group had a total of 14 meetings. We surveyed 6 stakeholder groups with a formal survey. These included members and donors, volunteers, town and government representatives, parents and teachers, the business community, and staff. We also had a draft of the strategic plan reviewed by 2 external stakeholders, which turned out to be a very successful effort. We've identified 5 strategic priorities or goals, and Steve will highlight some of those during his presentation. But let me introduce Steven. Clearly, you all know him, but let me just make a few comments about Steven and his leadership. That leadership has been characterized by honesty, professionalism, diplomacy, thoughtfulness, and passion for the mission of the organization. He cares deeply about the environment and the people of the community. We're grateful for his consistent, pragmatic, and intelligent leadership. So Steven, if you would then present your thoughts to the board, that'd be great.
First, I have to get my wits back about me, Joel. Thank you. I truly appreciate those kind comments, and we couldn't be more fortunate for the team that we have and have assembled. On a personal note, this is 18 years is marked by Halloween this year that I've been at Coastal Rivers, and before that, the Damariscotta River Association. And of those, I started in 2009 as the executive director, and we've put together just in that time these 2 organizations, and have just enjoyed the growth and the change and the chance to connect with and affect the community, and also learn from and listen to the community as well. So it's been an incredible time, and it just hit me the other day as the Halloween decorations went up that Halloween Day itself will be 18 years at Coastal Rivers, and so it's an exciting time. Back several years ago, and just one more personal note, I wrote a piece in one of our newsletters about finding a moose, and that my daughter said, "Dad, I'm a Maine girl, but I've never seen a moose before." And I just wanted to share that this summer we found her a moose. We had to go all the way up to the Rangeley area, but we found a moose. But I am happy to say we have some moose right on the peninsula, and I'll tie that back into some of my comments tonight. Before I jump into the slideshow about and share some of the successes of this past year, I wanted to ask our treasurer of the board, Bob Barkalow, to share some of the updates on the current financial situation, where we stand, and also, as I introduced Bob, to thank him too for his leadership on the financial front, as well as many other fronts within the organization. But that's been a wonderful partnership, and thank you, Bob, and over to Bob.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Evening, everyone. I'm Bob Barkalow, Board Treasurer. I'm going to take just a few minutes for this year's Treasurer Report. And when I say I'm keeping this short, I mean really short. Not because the financials or the financial statements aren't important. Of course they are. They just don't make for terribly interesting viewing, in my opinion. But as always, full details for the organization's finances, financial picture, et cetera, are available on our website. This includes the IRS Federal Form 990 filing, as well as our full financial statements provided by our annual audit process from Purdy Powers, the third-party independent auditors. And if there are any questions, either tonight or at any time, please feel free to reach out to myself, Stephen, through the usual channels. I think everyone here probably knows the phone number and the website and the email address, but those will be presented later as well. So in real brief, Coastal River's finances are solid. We're in fine shape. There are no warnings or red flags. Our balance sheet is healthy. And for the fiscal year ending June 30, our profit and loss exceeded our budget goals significantly. And of course, the pandemic had a significant financial impact on our business as well as everyone else's, in particular, or especially in terms of the education revenue from summer camp and other school or after school programs, lost revenue from Darrow's barn rentals, also put on hold for obvious reasons. But despite these COVID challenges, the organization persevered through all of the last 18, 19, however many months it's been, way too long. And in large part, this is due to the generosity and continued support of our members, all of you. Thank you all. Your sponsorship continues to allow Coastal Rivers to maintain the mission, committed champion of our community for caring for lands and waters, conservation of special places, trails, public access, deepening connections to nature. I know you all know this, but again, thank you. And of course, this isn't an organization that rests on its laurels. There are big aspirational changes that the board and staff have set up within the updated strategic plan that Joel mentioned. And you'll hear more from Stephen about these goals, which of course can only be achieved with all of your help. Thank you again for your ongoing support. I can't say thank you enough times. And of course, I'm happy to take any questions now or at any point in the future. Back to you, Joel or Stephen.
I'll jump right back in. Thanks, and thank you, Bob. And also, Bob leads a wonderful finance committee that reports back to the board. So some wonderful minds on that group, and who poke at it and ask the questions, and that's a great help. If the 990 or the audit, if that's too much detail, but you'd like some detail, there's also the annual report that we've put up online, and that came through in one of your invitation responses for tonight's meeting. So the 2020 annual report, and we're about to go through the next one. So before moving on, anything in relation to the finances that anyone would like to ask? One more thing to tack on again is we achieved our goals financially, even though we had lost revenue from programs, again, thanks to the support of members. And as we go forward, the need is greater than ever to achieve, with the pressure that is upon our resources, to take those next steps. So I just want to add my thanks, though, to all of you for seeing us through some challenging times. So I want to share some of what we've made happen. Oh, yes, Dick and Emily. Dick.
Yeah, Dick. I'm Dick. She's Emily. Did the organization borrow money from the government to get its way through the pandemic? And if it did, will it have to pay it back, or is it does it turn out to be a grant?
So 2 PPP loans. So once things closed down in March, we really said we don't know where this is going. Would we have to consider reducing staffing hours, furloughing, that sort of thing? The arrival of the PPP loan was critical at that time and key to, so we did take it, and we have been forgiven PPP 1. So we took a loan just over $100,000. That allowed us the solidity to continue on and press forward with the program. So really just what it was designed to do, it did do for us. We did a PPP 2 loan, and we are entering into forgiveness for that as well.
Thank you.
So hopefully same exact kind of loan, same criteria. So we hope we'll be forgiven since they forgave the first, but that's in process rather than done. Any other thing financially related? I don't want to plow through if there are questions on that front. So one last financially related piece, 1,800 supporters, and those are households, not just individual. If we multiplied that by 2 in many cases, or 2.5, or with Sam and other cats and pets in the background, more than that, but 1,800 household units, and that also includes some businesses and others, supported us in the past year. So this is incredible breadth, and those are from $5 student members, and we really do have some of those, up to, so in some cases, some grants in excess of $100,000, but members making gifts from $50,000 to $20,000 and a whole bunch in between. But I just wanted to share what a breadth and number of supporters, and that's something I feel truly grateful for, is the strength of community support, and that's old and new. That's from here and from away. Some of the wonderful gifts in this past year have come from people that 10 years ago were in a selectmen's meeting saying, "What the hell are you doing taking land off the tax rolls?" And that's a huge sense of, that's one of the nicest things, to have received a couple of gifts from some of those people that 10 years ago we began that conversation. And I say it with, what the hell are we doing? It was a conversation, and we've always treated it as a conversation, and learning from each other about what is public value and how do we view public value. So we've tried, and I think to a large extent, because of the wonderful team we have, staff, volunteers, the towns we work with, the supporters like you, we have baked that right into the work we do, as community value at every turn. In particular, that stands out in the education programs that we do. And in fact, this gift that came in and that I mentioned, the person I talked to afterward, because I was really excited that he had made this gift, and he said, "I love that you guys do cross country over at Great Salt Bay Farm in the fall." And of course, the birds have already nested, and it's a safe time and a good time to use it that way. And he said, "I love that you do cross country." And it turned out that one of his kids had gone through the cross country program. So it's that breadth of support is just incredible. I'm going to start our slideshow now, and you will first see a PowerPoint screen, but then I will start it from within. Okay, and here we go. Slideshow from the first slide. Okay, could you give me a thumbs up if you see it? All right, good. Okay, so welcome to the Membership Celebration 2021. Wish it were in person with Stone Cove Catering. We promise one as soon as we can. So I owe you some crab cakes. I'm gonna go back to here. We mentioned the Coastal River staff, and I wanted, before this began, we had a chance for each one to just say, hey, I just wanted to go through that staff group one more time to share what a wonderful group I have the privilege to work with as executive director. And many have been here for many years, and some have joined our team. We've had a couple changes in the recent years, but I'm excited to introduce Claire Luce Baldwin again, who's our membership and development manager. Angela DeVoe, our education assistant. She has really given us new ways to connect with the local schools. And we're now doing programs in every one of the AOS schools. That's both the K-8s and also Lincoln Academy. And the fact that we have Angela as part of that staff, that was one of our promises and hopes through the capital campaign that we completed, was to bring on an educator to strengthen our program, and that's just what she's doing. Our communications and outreach manager, Hannah McGee, and you get to see her many wonderful creations regularly. And in fact, because of her part in our work, the quality of the prints and the graphics, she came as with a graphics background as well as being a wonderful writer. Joan Ray has joined us as Director of Land Conservation, and Lisa Renton as our stewardship manager. Lisa's just a couple weeks in. We've had the chance to work with Lisa for many years in her role as the 12 Rivers coordinator for 10 land trusts in the Mid-Coast region. And she has joined us as our stewardship manager. So some of you knew Jesse, and that was a lands and stewardship position. Before that, Steve Spencer, and before that, me in that role. So fast forward to 2 organizations coming together as one, that stewardship, lands and stewardship position now with twice as many properties has split into a lands position and a stewardship position, which is also one of our strategic hopes and goals over many years. And the last 3, Sarah Gladue, Director of Education and Citizen Science. So if you're out there counting horseshoe crabs or taking water samples, she's in charge of that, as well as our education programs overall. Many of you came through the door of the Mid-Coast Stewards, which happened this year again. We got some great new volunteers through that. These are volunteers who take a 40-hour course, and then they give back 40 hours of volunteer service to a conservation group of their choice, which sometimes is us and often is also other groups in the area, which is terrific. Jim Grenier, our Trails and Facilities Manager. Jim is a former contractor who then went back to Unity College and Natural Resources and brings both sets of skills to bear on our trails and also our facilities. It's been incredible to have the quality that he brings, as well as the great planning and just great member of the team, bringing the volunteers in and leveraging lots more than just one person. Jim has created a team with him to take his skills and spread them out and make change happen. And if you see some of the beautiful new additions to the trailheads and the trails, a lot of that work is under Jim's leadership. Darren Kamen, who basically maybe hired 2 weeks after I became executive director, and has been with us ever since, is really the heart of the operations manager. All things connect through Darren. And if you want to know the answer, and you could sometimes ask her instead of me. And we're really enjoy working together. And so that's our team of 9. And I want to thank each and every one of them for the privilege of working with them, both the longtime team members and the new ones. And it's got a great feel so far with the team as it stands. I believe, kind of from a strategic trajectory standpoint, we'll be at about this level for a couple of years to come, with an eye toward, as we expand our stewardship of more lands and also go more deeply into the stewardship of those lands. That's managing invasive species, addressing broader trail systems, and doing more for making trails that are accessible. As we care for a greater portfolio, the one place looking ahead over this middle term is additional strength in that stewardship department. Again, really driven by volunteers. This is additional staff capacity to manage and put together and work with this incredible team of volunteers. So when you're supporting the organization, you're supporting a team that in turn is working with a big circle of volunteers, over 200 this past year. Even in a COVID year, we have big numbers of supporters. And these have been now in smaller groups than usual, but we've finally gotten back to those groups of 15 and more for our Trail Tamers days and so forth. I'm going to show just this quick video, Main Mountain Media, with Hannah as point person to just create this quick little intro. We use some footage from some other projects that we've done as well. So here you go. And that's something we can use when at intros to film fests and things like that. So that gives you a sense of the ways that we're talking about the work and explaining the work, with education being beyond just the school part, but connecting with people of all ages across the community. The schools, though, are a big part and remain a big part. So this last year and a half, 2020 and 21, it's been a little different. And that's no more is that true than with our education programs. And while on the one hand, not being able to do some of the things we've usually done has created new challenges, it's also given us a chance to innovate. And when I talk about this great staff I get a chance to work with and the volunteers who help inform the programs in our strategic direction, great alternatives came about as a result of the pandemic. And these are many things that will continue on because they've increased access geographically and also access for those with mobility challenges. Since we couldn't get together for a period of time, we created new ways to reach some of our existing audiences and some new ones. One of those that I thought was just great was this Camp in a Box project. We created 100 kits. And I'm just going to read the list of what's in there because I love this stuff. And I wish I had had one of these when I was a kid. So each box contains a compass, a magnifying glass, an insect net, a bug cage, a petri dish, pipettes, an owl pellet for dissection, a fossil, a Maine nature pocket guide, a nature journal, a pencil, a ruler, stainless steel Coastal Rivers water bottle you can see in the picture there, a lanyard, and a whole folder of games, activities, and instructions. So these were developed by Sarah and by Angela, packaged up, and kids used them. We created 100 and we sold out in 2020. Testimonial from Chloe, who was one of the kids who used it. She said, I recommend going to Camp Mumachog, both in person and virtually. It is super fun. You get to do fun activities and you get to have fun with your friends. My favorite thing virtually was watching Sarah showing us around the camp. My favorite thing together is catching insects and frogs. So these have made a real impact. And one of the fun things is we got photos sent by parents and grandparents of kids using their Camp in a Box and checking out insects. Some of them were on the beach, some were just in their backyards, and it opened up new frontiers close to home. The other thing that showing up here is Sarah's teaching a class where she's teaching teachers about how to use the outdoors as a classroom. In this case, it's specifically focused on Wabanaki education, but at a time when teachers needed more outdoor opportunities, our staff and crew were right there to meet them with that need and help teach them how to teach outdoors. In some cases, teachers were trying the outdoors for the first time and needed additional skills. And Sarah offered online workshops to the teachers, and they got invested in that and involved. And it was a whole series. So that was, and we got great feedback that these are the relationships that we built during this time, or during the pandemic time. Now that things have opened up a little bit, that demand for programs has continued. And now that we're able to be in and out of school more, there is a lot going on with teachers that we had never connected with before. So that's another positive. Again, during this time of transition, when we couldn't be in the schools and outside educators weren't brought in, we created a Wabanaki Fair. So normally in the fall, schools come out to Salt Bay Farm and do a project over the course of 2 weeks. We pair up with a Native American educator. In this case, we couldn't do that, but we created a Wabanaki Fair that traveled to each of the local schools, and it came with a whole set of activities, and it stayed up in many cases for the whole week. So the students and the teachers got to work their way through the different stations of the fair and got to see the birch bark canoe that we would deliver to the site. And we got, again, really strong reaction from the teachers in its favor. And this may be something that we continue with. We have the kits now. So even though there's a limit of some 500 kids for our fall program in person over the course of 2 to 2.5 weeks, this could extend our reach because demand has exceeded supply, even though we've built our supply over time. So this would be a nice combination or a continuation. A group that's going to come could start with some games, and we do a lot of outside of the actual day that they arrive for the program. They do a lot in school beforehand and afterward. And as ever, we're always connecting with curriculum goals. So this is not an add-on for teachers. It's something that's helping them meet their curriculum goals and demonstrates how they can fulfill that goal in a way that's really engaging for the students. As far as resources for teachers, we also developed a whole set of these boxed kits. And here, this is all about pollinators. Those pom-poms represent different kinds of pollen and things that, that are part of this kit. The lesson plans, the whole set is there and ready to go. The teacher can pick it up and use it, and it's ready to roll. So it's even by grade level with targeted stuff, again, connecting to the learning objectives. Additionally, and this is where I mentioned reaching people that sometimes can't get out or might not be able to get out onto our properties or might be farther afield. We've connected with some members who have moved a little farther south, some had to Topsom and some even farther away, but have created a whole online video library of resources and trainings. This one in the slide here about getting bluebirds to your feeder. And what I want to show you is this link here. It's pretty easy to find on the website, but we've got a whole bunch of different programs. They're listed by category, and this is a whole set of recorded workshops and trainings. And I'm super, super excited to have seen some of these myself. So a lot of times we're offering programs and multiple things are happening in a single day. So this has also allowed staff to view some others. 21 total recorded workshops. And they're all there on our website. You can go see them. If a teacher is doing a particular subject, they can go and pull that up and bring that into the classroom. So invasive plants, we've done horseshoe crabs, foraging, protecting water quality, tracks and signs, and a whole bunch more. So check it out on the website there. Encourage you to use those, visit them. We've done guided walks of different preserves. And that's something particularly if November and the hunting season and you can't get out, check it out. So even as we innovated, we continued on with our most important programs and grew those programs as well. Critical to particularly our freshwater bodies is keeping out invasive species. And right here, Elliot Omani is a local Lincoln Academy student whom we hired. So this was harder year to bring in volunteers, but we hired this student who's a wonderful connector with people who arrive at boat ramps to keep out invasive aquatic species. So that's called our courtesy boat inspection program. And Elliot did a fabulous job. Invasive plant patrol is keeping track of invasive species in our water body. So cruising around by kayak, checking out what's happening there. And if a sample of a plant shows up that looks suspect, the volunteer brings that in and it gets keyed out and identified to make sure that this invasive plant, which could do so much damage to our local water bodies, is not one of concern. This is not an invasive plant that's come in. And so far, with fingers crossed, and because of these efforts, we have not been subject in the Pemaquid watershed or our tributaries to the Damariscotta either to invasive aquatic plant species. Lake Smart is a great program. This is about landowners and their practices, and it's a chance to both educate and feature landowners whose practices are exemplary. we have done 7 pieces that it's called Lake Smart Start. These are people getting ready and evaluated to become Lake Smart supporter or Lake Smart qualified. I'm just going to fast forward to one slide here. Let's see if there we go. So right here, some Lake Smart awardees getting their award last year in 2020, and that's Pat and Jim Alfieri. And then water quality sampling. Here's one of our water quality volunteers. That's Tom Brewer. And we've got, as I said, 7 lakeshore owners working on their certification for Lake Smart. Swim beach monitoring. So we want to make sure that when people go to our beaches on our freshwater and also saltwater, that they're safe and healthy. So our volunteers monitor water quality at our swim beaches. We have 7 stations in the Damariscotta River estuary. We've been monitoring for many, many years. First is Tidewater Watch, and now as we call it Tidewater Watch 2.0, but it's a broader set of variables that we monitor for, from oxygen to temperature to pH, and look at some finer variables too, like what's happening with nitrogen. Are things getting more acidic as rain events change? So it's really important, particularly in light of a changing climate, to keep track of what's happening in our water bodies across many new variables. And again, that's a volunteer-driven program. Our horseshoe crab count that I mentioned earlier, that's largely conducted by volunteers. And additionally, this year, we had an intern do some specialized counting of juveniles. I'll come back to that in a sec. And finally, continued work with towns. So we seek to be partners with the towns and continue to be partners with the towns, whether they're developing their new plan, like the town of Nobleboro. Sarah was right there. Sarah Glady was right there helping with water quality goals for the town of Nobleboro and their comprehensive plan. We've worked closely with the Bremen Conservation Commission in the past with Damariscotta as well. So being a resource to towns is part of what we're doing in water quality, so that local ordinances continue to improve to protect our water bodies. Go back to the Horseshoe Crab Project. And so this is our wonderful intern that we had, and Ashley Ugley. And what she showed through her work is that Great Salt Bay, Maine's first marine protected area, is the sole place where these juveniles hang out. So it's, again, elevated Great Salt Bay as a critical place in the entire Damariscotta River system. And it stands out and was the thing that should have been done to be turned into a marine protected area. That built on the work of Zach Bay, who was a Lincoln Academy student, if you can believe it, did preliminary work in this area that Ashley was a college student at, she was at Bard College, and she built upon Zach's work. So between the two of them, they showed the value of Great Salt Bay. So we've gotten all these great messages during the pandemic, people saying, your natural areas, your trails, that's what's keeping me sane. And for the first time on, gosh, I mean, maybe not half of our notes, but a third or a fraction of our donations, but a pretty large number, people have written on, love your trails. Thanks for helping me keep my head screwed on straight. So our trail use has been dramatically up. And with that has been the need to care for the trails even more. And our Trail Tamer volunteer corps have been hard at work. And if you've been out and about, you can see how much maintenance has been done, trail trimming, trail clearing, work at the kiosks. Right here in the picture on the right is a brand new bridge over at Salt Bay Farm. We call it the Fox Run Bridge. We also need to make sure that all these new trail users don't get lost. So we've done a lot of work to update our maps and keep them current, and have gotten some great feedback from that. I love the term staying found, and that's what we help people do with Stay Found this summer. And so those are all online. So if you want to check it out, we have them printed out down here in our office, but you can also pick those up online. They're printable, and they cover all of our properties now, rebranded with the new logo. I mentioned partnering with the Town of Bremen Conservation Commission on kind of the stuff, things like ordinances and that sort of thing, but we've also partnered very concretely on a new trail. They needed some help with planning and how do you go about it, and our staff and volunteers helped them to begin building out this Hilton O'Connor Trail over there in Bremen. We've rerouted this bridge and replaced this bridge as well. So this is a spot where there, again, a lot of erosion. Heavy trail use has caused more erosion, so we've needed to step it up. And again, the crew has met that. This one we completed with the help of the Maine Conservation Corps. That's sort of built on the old Civilian Conservation Corps model. Young folks, a lot of college age and nearby to college age students. Wonderful group. They camped out at the Nature Center, and they have been such a source of help for heavy lifting as well as technical trail building, and they helped establish these new bridges among many other projects this summer. And everybody on the crew loves a new trail. And this year, Kai's Woods, which is off of Poor Farm Road in Bristol, is one such new trail. And the blazes, I believe, went in this week. The trimming happened last week, the final project. And so it is just about ready to go. There's a little work at the trailhead itself, but that trail takes you down to the Pemaquid River. That's going to be one of our few dog-free spots because of the ground nesting bird populations down there. So this is really a spot for wildlife observation. And you head down to the section of the Pemaquid River where the bird life is incredible. The waterfowl in particular congregate down there. So highly recommend that when you have a chance to check out the new Kai's Woods Trail. That's one of the great pieces there. And there are some of the folks on this call. There's Emily in the front, Emily McKenzie, and I believe that's Ralph Norwood in the back. I can't quite make out who's right behind Emily. And but this is a great trail crew at work. Also, I mentioned a little bit earlier, as we're expanding our portfolio of lands and are caring for the lands, one of the things that we are working on and really beginning to tackle in a big way are invasive species. So clearly, everywhere you look across New England, there are tons and tons of invasive species. Multiflora rose. You've seen the bamboo-like Japanese knotweed springing up everywhere. We're not going to be able to eradicate all invasive species, but certain invasive species can displace native species to such a degree that they present a real threat to the health of the land and the natural populations that are there. So we're really right now in the process of determining how we best tackle the most threatening invasive species. Right here, multiflora rose getting tackled, and a whole bunch of bittersweet as well, right at Salt Bay Farm. So sorry, at Round Top Farm. Our two farms sometimes get me confused, but Round Top Farm right here, this is the Bittersweet Brigade, and they've been hard at work with weekly trimming parties to remove heavy invasive species, particularly along our hedgerows at Round Top Farm. And I just want to give just a word of thanks and appreciation for their efforts, which have been as relentless or even more so than the invasive species that they're tackling. So we truly appreciate that. And again, we're working on a broad strategy across all of our properties to tackle the ones that have the biggest effect. Some of them even send out a chemical that keeps other plants from growing, like black swallowwort. So we're focusing on those where we have a good chance to set them back and make a difference. I'm going to go forward and back again to Twin Villages Food Bank Farm. So on 3 acres of our land at no cost, we've provided a home, a permanent home for Twin Villages Food Bank Farm, who grows food now almost 50,000 pounds. They're on track to grow more than 45,000 pounds of vegetables this year for local food banks throughout Lincoln County. And they have the greenest thumbs you've ever seen of any farmers, with dinner plate size broccolis and the most delicious carrots you can imagine. They're making a huge difference with real food that's needed by food banks. Very specifically, they grow 12 crops. They're not growing esoteric vegetables that people won't eat. This is stuff that they need. And they're also working with local groups like the Farms program at the Y to teach the users of the food how to make use of those, even something like carrots, how to expand their use of those vegetables. Some of the kids in the after school program at Farms make carrot soup out of the carrots that come from Twin Villages Food Bank Farm. So there's this whole loop and circle. And in addition to the team I talked about of staff, volunteers, and members, are many, many partners in the community that we continue to build partnerships with and collaborate with, so that the whole is really greater than the sum of its parts. And this three-way with the Y, farms, it's really four-way. The farms program joined the Y, so now it's three-way. So the farms program, Twin Villages Food Bank Farm, and Coastal Rivers working together to provide healthy food. And we're providing the space, and we're also providing the administrative home for this to happen. And we're really excited about these team members as well, that they're part of the family and also their own entity as well. So I'm jumping now to what I love most, and maybe what got me into this work in the first place was love of maps. And I did promise my fellow staff that I wouldn't go too crazy with maps. I fear I might not have totally kept my promise, but I do want to show some really exciting projects that have happened this past year with your support. And the overarching idea here is making connections, that not only the connections we make with the community, but the natural connections that we make among properties from one to the other. If you're a moose and you're wandering around and looking for a mate, looking for food, you need connected corridors. You won't want to pass through a developed area. And shy species like bobcat, the same thing. And it's true of even some bird species that need to be far from human disturbance. So two things that we really need across the whole landscape are big blocks of land and connections between those big blocks. So think of the big blocks as your living room and the connectors as your hallways. Just like we wouldn't want to live just in hallways, nor would animals in these narrow strips of land. But the hallway can help you get from one living room to another spot to live. And that's what we're working on, is developing out those big blocks, those living rooms, and making the corridors that connect them together. So looking at the map here, just to get you oriented, I'm sitting up here at Round Top Farm right now. This is the upper river, the Twin Villages. Can you all see my cursor as I move that? Damerscata River here, Pemaquid River watershed throughout here, coming out at Pemaquid Mill. Dodge Point right there in the center. And I'm just gonna refer to my color key just to make sure that I'm telling you the right colors, because I'm not so good at colors, particularly reds and greens. So on this map, new properties are shown in red. The dark blue are properties that we own. The lighter blue striped ones, those are conservation easements. Those are properties that are held privately, but there are permanent conservation restrictions that we monitor annually with our group of volunteers. So we become partners indefinitely with whoever owns the property at the time it survives transition of ownership. And these are often done by people with a real connection to their land. They want to see it stay wild for years to come. And these are some exceptional properties as well that remain in private hands that supplement the ownership pieces, where we like to own the property when we're going to build the trails, manage it actively, but they combine with conservation easements across the landscape to provide wildlife habitat and water quality enhancements and many more benefits. So that's the lighter blue striped ones. The dark green are partner owned, where we have a co-management role. So for example, Dodge Point is just one such piece, or up here, that's owned by Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, but we're the local manager and co-manager. So those are the dark green ones. And the light green ones are selected partner preserves. Excuse me. We show those to provide kind of a landscape context as to how this all fits together. So for example, the Schmid Preserve right here is a large block that's owned by the town of Edgecombe and managed by the Schmid Preserve group. So here's Riverlink as a whole. Excuse me. The upper Damerscata River, the suite of ponds and protected areas throughout the Pemaquid River. And you can see how over time we're building and connecting these larger blocks. The red ones are the new ones. So right here, the Schaller Preserve, this is on the west side of the Damerscata River. Ken Schaller, who passed away just over a year ago, in his estate left us this beautiful, about 70 acres of land just off the river road that helped build out this corridor north into town. This property right here, we bought from Mr. Edelson, and that's over 160 acres, also off the river road. The Riverlink Trail runs right through here, and I'm going to show you another map of that in a second, but I wanted to just first give an overview of the new properties. This next property here along Middle Road in Edgecombe is 200 acres purchased from the Piankowski family. Now, this is a family we've worked with to also round out the Sherman Marsh Preserve, 40 new acres just a couple of years ago, and filling in a gap in the holdings as well. So these are the, excuse me, the new ones up here. And as we go south, you'll see on the east side over by Laverna, a new parcel. That was a bargain sale situation. So over $100,000 in value, we bought it for $20,000. And the difference of that $80,000 was an outright gift from the property owner. So they just wanted to clear some basic amount, but really wanted to see it conserved. So that added to the Laverna Preserve out here, which is one of my favorites. And then also an outright donation, the Captain Robert Spear Preserve, about 18 acres off the Texas Road down in South Bristol. So a variety of ways that we've acquired the properties, from outright gifts to bargain sales to purchases. Several of those fueled by both individuals and by some foundations as well. So membership support is setting us up to be ready to answer the call when someone comes in and says, I've got a piece of property I'd like to donate. I've got a piece of property I'm considering what to do with it. We're here to answer that call. And because of the ability to turn things around quickly, which has only grown with our addition of Joan as the conservation director to answer those calls quickly. And the response is, here's my land, I'd like to donate it. Here's my land, it's worth $100,000, but I'll sell it to you for $20,000. And that's determined by an appraisal. So this is really solid stuff. So we're grateful to all the folks who have been involved in donations of land. And this year, we did not get a donation of a conservation easement, but just to note, that's an important part of the overall conservation picture. And conservation easements, again, stay in private hands of the person who makes the gift of the easement, but they still provide a number of conservation benefits. And in some cases, they actually also provide some access. Access isn't a requirement for conservation easements when they meet other public benefits. So I just wanted to drill down to Riverlink just because it's so cool how this all fits together. Again, this Edelson property, this is the Riverlink Trail. It starts at Dodge Point at the north, goes all the way to the McKay Road, sort of toward the middle. And now it extends even down into the Zach Preserve owned by Boothbay Region Land Trust. So a great walk. If you ever have a chance, you can leave one car at one end and leave the other at the other end and walk from one end. It's over 5 miles and it feels like you're in the North Woods. So this was a narrow spot, and the addition of the Edelson property, as yet to be named, that was an outright purchase, rounds out that corridor. And the Middle Road parcel over by the west is starting to build the connection up to the Sherman Marsh property. So we only have a little gap there now. So you can see how we're filling it in. And again, I talked about the living room for the wildlife, and this is building out that living room, this big chunk of protected land. And we need thousands of acres to make that happen. It really starts around 2,000 acres and goes up from there in terms of the value becomes increasingly great faster than the acreage grows. So in other words, once you reach that 2,000 acre mark, you get huge benefit to go from 2,000 to 3,000. And that's guiding our very strategic land acquisition throughout the region. I'm going to go back again to a couple of shots. This is the 164 acre property that I mentioned on River Road. Some beautiful forest. There are also some gorgeous waterfalls there. We don't yet have trails in there, but right from River Road, you can actually see the water flowing underneath the river. And just to go back to that map for a sec, this is the parcel that I'm showing the picture of. There's a tributary here into the Damariscotta River, so it has a huge impact on water quality as well. Forests are big sponges and they're big filters, and so the water that flows off there is nice and cool and fresh and clean, versus if you opened up that and cut into it and developed it, it wouldn't provide those benefits to water quality. Captain Robert Spear Preserve that I mentioned, that's down at, this is Bradstreet Cove, and we're looking out toward Poorhouse Cove, and it's right off of Texas Road, again in South Bristol. This is some beautiful mossy ledge, and there are these neat bits of forest with undulating ledges, and it's high up. And a trail down the road, we are working on some additional conservation right around there. So looking ahead, Joel talked about our plan, about our strategic plan, and all the wonderful ways that people have been engaged in that process, all of our constituents, that we really took a look as this new unified group and said, where do we go from here? What's needed to preserve the best of this region and connect it and make sure that we have moose and bobcats and bears and wildlife and birds of all kinds as part of our daily lives the way they have been for generations to come. So I've talked about properties that we have conserved, and there's some really good ones ahead, but I want to start out with trails because that's how I got into this business. I mentioned maps, but also trails, and we currently have just shy of 50 miles of trails. We want to expand the trails, and we know from COVID the passion for trails, the need for trails, and some of you have seen certainly a place like Laverna has been heavily used more than ever during the pandemic. The need for more trails is there, but also the need for more accessible options. We've gotten such great use of this trail here at Round Top Farm, and we want to extend accessible trails that are available to people with mobility challenges as well into additional properties. So upping our game on trail maintenance, now that was a goal of the strategic plan. These are not our technical goals as listed. These are in my own words about what we want to do. This has already been happening, as I shared, and that just means that with more impact comes the need to be on the trails more, to harden some of the surfaces so you don't get those spots where you get a wide patch of mud. You build the bog bridges when you need them, or you build what's called a turnpike with raised gravel to stay nice and dry and not let the trail spread out. It means improving the trailheads, and I've talked about the maps. It's keeping people found. The next big thing is, what are we going to do about climate change? Now, we know that our work in and of itself is critical. Forests absorb carbon. Our northern forests are a huge carbon sink, and the more that we keep our wildlands intact as they are and allow them to mature more, mature forests absorb even more. So the work itself of our conservation is absolutely critical and a central piece to the climate solution as far as prevention. It's also key to climate adaptation as we get more intense events, flood events, rain events, where you get these pulses of water that come faster and more furiously, as we've seen across the country. Having intact forests, having intact wetlands provides a sponge to slow down that water and prevent the floods from being as bad. So it's also part of the adaptation. But finally, we have to ask, beyond the conservation work we do, which is so key to the climate solution, what can we do operationally as well to reduce our harm and impact? One of our strategic goals is that in 5 years, we'll be carbon neutral with our operations. So that involves getting rid of our use of fossil fuels altogether, and our new headquarters at Round Top Farm, the Denny Center, is 100% electric, using very efficient mini split heat pumps throughout. And but how we power our electrical future is critical. If we just powered it with carbon intensive coal or even natural gas, which is slightly less so, to run these electric systems, that's not enough. So right here at Round Top Farm, I am pleased to say the drills were going today. These ground screws are going in that just go right into the field, and we're putting up an acre of solar panels to power all of our operations. It will cover all of our electrical use across our entire operation. That's multiple sites as well. We're putting in a charging station for what will be more electrical equipment ahead, as well as electric vehicles, both for our use on our campus and beyond. And the solar farm is by revision. It's an acre, but again, in the realm of collaboration, if we were to go in by ourselves and build a solar farm, our electricity would be slightly more expensive than it is today. But by joining forces with Kiev Wavis, we've been able to create a system that's a full acre in size and bring down the price per kilowatt hour of electricity to a price that's below what we're paying now. So we've locked this in for years to come. And we know that CMP doesn't lower their rates. We've got a very low rise for a locked in period for all of our electrical needs. So not only will it be solar, but we're also going to be saving money. And after 5 years, we can buy the farm, the solar farm. It becomes our own panels. So right now it will be owned by an investor who can use the tax credits, which allows us to get those low rates for electricity. As a nonprofit, we couldn't do that. Once those tax credits have expired in 5 years, we can now buy the system and continue to operate it. It has a life of 35 to 40 years. So this is a fabulous investment, as well as being absolutely essential to powering our electric future in all of our operations. So we're super excited that the construction was beginning in these last couple of weeks, and it looks great. It's well sited at Round Top Farm. It's on a field where it's not a high production field, and we've worked with the neighbors, we've worked with the town, and found something we're really happy about and can't wait to show you that. I talked a lot about connecting conserved lands for people and wildlife, and I'm going to show you a couple more projects in the works. Expanding nature education programs in all schools. So I mentioned how the addition of Angela has allowed us to be in all the local AOS 93 schools. The teachers are knocking on our doors for more programs, more outdoor stuff. The addition of a yurt that we built for the Great Salt Bay School at their request is something that the teachers and the administration have wanted to be able to leverage their outdoor programs. We're continuing to work with the Great Salt Bay School to expand, but also the other AOS 93 schools, Noblesboro, Bristol, South Bristol as well, and Lincoln Academy. So part of our strategic plan is to grow our presence in the classroom even more. Finally, water quality protection. Again, this is not out of the strategic plan. More, bigger, better was my shorthand, but those Lake Smart designations, we've got 7. So in the past, we've done 2, 3. In a couple of years, we might have 2 or 3 people get a Lake Smart designation. Right now alone, we have 7 people working on their designation over the next year or 2. We're expanding our invasive plant patrols beyond the initial sweep of the ponds to make sure that if a new invasive species shows up, we're on it. I mentioned expanding our water quality programs and how we monitor for things like nitrogen as well as acidity. So these changing storm events have created a situation where bigger pulses of fresh water can increase the acidity of the estuary systems as well. So tracking that. And then back to maps. And I think I just did violate the don't go crazy on maps pledge, but this is too exciting not to share. So the red striped properties are properties in the works. I showed you the red solid properties were the ones we completed earlier. The red striped ones are the properties in the works. And this one right in the middle is the Hunt Half Moon Pond. This is owned by Norman Hunt of NC Hunt. We have an option to purchase that this coming spring. We have several grants in the works. This is very grant fundable through federal grants. There's also some interest among a couple of members of our board in supporting this. So this is well on its way to completion our first option period goes through April, and that's a Dodge Point size piece of land right there. Almost 500 acres. It's 476 acres of land surrounding Half Moon Pond. It drains east to the Pemaquid and west to the Damariscotta River. So it also bridges the original territory of the two parent groups that came together and unified to become Coastal Rivers Conservation Trust. So we're protecting two watersheds when we protect that. Coming up north, at a totally different scale, 1.5 acres, the Freeman Corner lots, right opposite McDonald's, are a way to connect the trail system back into town, because there's a new sidewalk going in on Church Street over the next couple of years, and the engineering's already been done on the sidewalk. By acquiring these two corner properties, we buffer the Round Top Farm, protect it from the onslaught of commercial development knocking on our door, and allow us to make that link back to town and the sidewalk system, so you can walk to town from town on the sidewalk, hop on the trail, and eventually, and we're getting closer and closer by the day, we've even made done all the surveying for it to go all the way out from Round Top Farm to Salt Bay Farm out of Belvedere Road with a fully accessible trail. So the vision, and it's becoming a reality as the days pass, is to go from town all the way to Salt Bay Farm, be totally safe either on a sidewalk or on the trail that we're constructing. So that's the importance. Even though it's 1.5 acres, it has outsized importance. The Half Moon Pond I mentioned, River Road here is a 73-acre parcel. Also, we're working with the Piankowski family. We have an option to purchase that in December. The importance is carrying from Dodge Point, building out what we're calling Riverlink North. This is a critical wildlife corridor, tons of moose in here as well. Moose sign, again, I haven't gotten to see the moose myself right here, but boy, is there plenty of moose sign in this stretch. And this critical piece, the Piankowski River Road property at 73 acres, allows us to make that link up into the north, with the hope that eventually you could walk from town to Dodge Point and be in the woods rather than on the very scary River Road. The next big piece, and a critical piece, is the tip of Plummer Point. So this whole area of Seal Cove, and here's Long Cove up here, has been a focal area for over 25 years. You can see here the Seal Cove Preserve. We added the Sweat property a few years ago to double that. Stratton Island was one of our first properties. Plummer Point at 70+ acres and a 10+ acre conservation easement, that's the Gardner easement. We have 80 acres protected just on Plummer, but it's part of this greater area of protected land around the Seal Cove area. But it's missing a piece at the end, and we want to make that whole. This tip is 8 acres, but thousands of feet of shoreline, and the best views of the seals that haul out in Long Cove, as well as deep water, a chance for people to access the property from the river. And this property at the tip, and this is, I'm sharing this with many of you, will be hearing this, I think, for the first time. The tip of Plummer Point, which has been owned by the Richardson-Hewlin family since the 40s, is currently, they have offered that to us for sale at what now amounts to a well below market sale. The purchase price is $1,276,000 for the tip. That is critical because the access to the tip runs right through the middle of the existing Plummer Point Preserve. If that were to be built up, it's been used very quietly and sustainably. The driveway is just a gravel track that people love to walk. It's the backbone of our trail system. But the property at the tip has rights to improve that road, pave it in its worst circumstance, increase the traffic. So not only are we preventing a harm by acquiring the tip, but we're also opening up new possibilities for education. It's a great place to expand our education programs, not just with South Bristol, like we're doing with the Witch Island program, but with other local AOS schools as well. It's a place you can get to by bus. And also for students with mobility limitations, it's a place that you could get in with a wheelchair or a van down into the tip. So we're incredibly excited about the Plummer Point acquisition. And I'm going to ask all of your help to help me find those people who love Plummer Point and want to contribute to that purchase. Because what I forgot to mention is right out of the gates, a branch of the family that you know well has agreed to contribute 1/3 of that value. So what's already a bargain sale of just shy of $1.3 million would be met by a third of that value. $425,000 would be contributed right back. The whole share of the Yulin branch of the family would contribute back to the purchase of that, leaving us only 2/3 of it to have to raise. So it's doubly, we're on our way with that project. And I'm going to jump ahead to a slide of, here's a closer up map. This again is the part that we seek to purchase. And I'm not sure if I gave a time frame, but it has to be done by March. So we're on our way, but we need your help again to identify people who love Plummer Point, want to see this happen, value the additional education and access that will allow. So I'd love to speak with you about it. Please, as we're looking at year end, please know that your annual fund support is the critical support. So if you were, I'd love to speak with you about this project separately and in person, personally, if I may. And if you have ideas, please send them my way. It's super exciting and the time frame is short. But there we go. Here's Plummer Point. So we're looking at it from the northeast, looking southwest. So this is Plummer Point. The preserve goes way down and up. If you can see my cursor, that's Farmers Island, Stratton Island, and Seal Cove, a really long, deep cove with some of the best clamming resources in the whole region, and a lot of protected land already, as I showed on the earlier map. And the Plummer Point campaign seeks to protect the entire tip. And again, it makes this whole, it makes Plummer Point whole. And that's great for wildlife, it's great for access, it's great for education. And here's the deep water dock for round the tide access for people who could arrive at Plummer Point by boat and explore from there, just as they do to Dodge Point and some of our islands. And thanks to Mike Kane for this beautiful shot. And that, oh, forgive me, from current slide, that is where I leave you. Here's the moose that wants to wander down the peninsula for generations to come. And with your help and with this bold future that we've put together and that we're making great headway toward, we'll be able to see that moose. Our grandchildren's children will be able to see that moose, the bobcats, the bears, and all of the shy birds and all the wildlife that need connected lands and connected landscapes. And also all of us who depend on trails, again, for our sanity, and those who appreciate that, and the kids who use these places and through our programs. So thank you for an incredible year. Thank you for your support to make each and every one of these different programs possible. And thank you for looking ahead with us and for your faith in this bold vision that's starting to take shape in a major way. So I couldn't be happier or more grateful to work in the community that we're part of and with all of you, the volunteers, the members, the supporters. It's truly a gift and a pleasure. So I thank you. And I turn it back to Joel, and who I just, in terms of gratitude, need to specifically share that with two people on the presentation tonight, with Bob and with Joel, who have been such partners in their board leadership. And these as volunteers for many years with great wisdom and humor and kindness and just great skill as well.
Well, Steven, thank you. I just wish you could get a little more excited about your work. I hope you all are as excited as I am to hear this really terrific story of this organization, where it's been last year, and the aspirational, ambitious, bold vision for the future. It's a very exciting time. As Bob reported, we're financially sound. We have a dynamic 5-year strategic plan. We've demonstrated our ability to accomplish our goals. So I've been asking myself, and maybe you've been asking yourselves, how in the world can we do all that we've done and have planned to do? Well, it takes a team for sure. It takes strong executive leadership. It takes a board with keen oversight and strategic direction. It takes varied and broad-based financial support. It takes an engaged membership. It takes hundreds of dedicated volunteers, from front desk volunteers to trail tamers to the bittersweet brigade to stewards. In fact, I was thinking about it, if everything that Steven mentioned as an activity could be in parentheses a list of all of the people who are involved in each of those activities, it would be a conglomeration of all of those people, skills, volunteers, board, and clearly a professional, dedicated staff. And I'd like to kind of end my comments by recognizing the staff from the membership and board perspective. Steven has acknowledged them. You've been introduced to the veterans and the new folks. But this is a group of talented, dedicated, professional practitioners. They're collaborative by nature. The last year and a half has demonstrated their flexibility and their resilience. They care deeply about the organization, the community, and about each other. And their results, or the results of their fine work, is evident every single day. If you haven't had a chance to engage with the staff, I encourage you to do so. You'll find a wonderful group of very successful, very professional, and very fine people, and you won't be disappointed. So thank you, staff, for all that you do. And I think the membership, all of you, should take great pride in the contributions that you have each made to the organization in so many different ways. So thank you very much for everything that you've done. We're all looking forward to a bright and successful future, and couldn't be possible without each and every one of you. So thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? If not, Steven, with your approval, we'll wrap up this meeting.
Yeah. Just a reminder, if anyone wants to speak up, you have to unmute yourself.
I'll give one more shot for any questions. And of course, anytime, please pick up the phone with any of us, staff, board, volunteers, and touch base. And if you have a question or a concern, or you hear something or have an idea, just please let us know. Always available, and love to connect. Norman.
Yes, I'd just like to say what a pleasure and an honor it's been to work with all of you and with the organization, and to welcome the new board members. You have a great challenge and a great opportunity ahead of you. We're really happy you've joined us. And thank you for all you've done.
And Norman, we will miss Norman immensely on the board of many, many years of wisdom and grace and skill and humor. Thank you, Norman.
Thank you.
Oh, that's really nice. And Claire's put up her direct contact information about questions about membership and so forth. Any other, before we sign off, any other thoughts, questions? Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much again. Yes. Yes, and please get out there and explore those trails, and hope to see you out on them and out and about.